Welcome to Paranormal Latte Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Sit back and relax with us. Grab yourself a really good drink. Spend an hour and let's delve into a world of chatter about the mysteries of the unexplained. Whether you are a skeptic or a believer makes no difference. It's not always in your imagination. Enjoy your day. Now that was good. Now that was good. My guest this evening is Rissa Miller. Rissa Miller is a public historian and professional speaker known for her captivating storytelling and deep dives into the mysteries of history. With a passion for esoteric subjects, Rissa leads tours, talks, and workshops throughout Pennsylvania, Maryland, and across the country. She blends local lore with fascinating research on everything from hauntings to herbs to Victorian mourning traditions. Rissa's experience has been featured in numerous media outlets, and she is the founder of Tea and Smoke, a platform where she offers tea leaf readings and smoke scrying sessions. In addition to her unique talk, she brings a compassionate perspective to all her projects and creates programs that invite people to connect with history, nature, and the paranormal. We had a lot to talk about this evening, so sit back and grab yourself your favorite teacup as we go head on head with my guest, Rissa Miller. Well, good evening, Rissa, and thank you so very much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. I'm super excited to be here and talking to you this evening.
Oh, I'm really happy to have you here. My goodness. Very fascinating person she is, and I think by the time we're done, just think twice about what we've talked about tonight. That's what I'm just telling you. I'm forewarning you right now. So the first thing I want to bring our listeners and our viewers into the conversation here is before the show, we had a little bit of a chat. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about where you are right now and what makes your location so interesting?
Absolutely. So right now I am coming to you from a friend's house. It is on a historic farm at the border of Pennsylvania and Maryland. You can see I'm right by the old original staircase, and I loved the staircase. It kind of puts you into a liminal space right away. And this house definitely has its own personalities that come and go. I don't know if any will join us today or not. There are some animals here as well. So if you see a dog or a cat wandering around, they're real. They're not hauntings. But that said, even just last night, I spent the night here, and in the middle of the night, I heard footsteps on the stairs, and they weren't the dog or the cat because they were in bed with me. We all three turned and looked, and we're like, oh, it's the ghost, whatever. And we went back to sleep. So I don't know who lived here. So the current owners can't find that information. Not all historical societies have information about everybody who's lived in a house, but I do know it was built in the 1880s. It's been here a very long time, and it's also like chock full of antiques, like this gorgeous piece behind me. So, it could be from one of those pieces just as much as the house.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, that a lot of people don't even know this, but the first thing that just popped into my head was Myrtle's Plantation, because when we did a tour there, the tour guide did say a lot of the stuff that you see in this house came from garage sales, antique stores down the road. We needed something to bring the age of this house and the elements of it kind of makes sense, And so everyone's running around thinking that everything is from that period of time or from the point where, the house just finally went into a tour site, but it's not. So I'm glad you brought that up, because do you have any idea if any of the objects in there that you're with might have an energy to it at all, or are you do you not necessarily pick up anything like that?
I'm not always looking for it on purpose, to be honest with you. Sometimes you can't help but notice it because it's practically shouting. Other times I kind of intentionally try to soften so that I can just sort of be in a place peacefully. I don't have any particular fear of finding out. It's just that I sometimes just want to be in my own head alone. So, I haven't noticed anything. And one of the other fascinating places about here, there are several outbuildings, and the owners have a collection of real human skulls. Oh. And there's definitely an energy around them. Right out of the gate, I'm going to tell you, I'm not superstitious. And I actually think skulls and bones in general are beautiful. I mean, we all have them. We're all using them right now, right? But they definitely have their own vibe. And I can feel that when I'm around those. And I can also feel in some of the outbuildings that once contained animals. I mean, there are barn cats here, but that's not the same. You can feel the energy of the animals who once lived there pretty clearly. Mm-hmm. So
that's interesting.
Those things, yeah, I can't help but notice. But otherwise, I try to sort of purposely just enjoy this quiet, beautiful space as it is. And I always trust the animals I'm with. So I trust the barn cats to know if something's going on. I trust the dogs. Animals have such a fantastic way of seeing into liminal space. So I always trust their opinion.
No, I agree with you. So last night when you had that little visitor walking up the stairs, did the animals seem skittish at all or anything, or were they just like, oh, huh? You know, they didn't really have that fear or concern about who was walking up the stairs. They just heard it too and went back to sleep with you. Do you think that's because you remain calm, or do you think that is just the reaction that they felt towards that energy?
You know, I think maybe both. First of all, I think that dogs, cats, horses will reflect the energy that you put onto them. Mm-hmm. And, birds probably too, maybe any animal. If you are reflecting fear and anxiety onto that creature, they're going to show it back. Mm-hmm. And I feel pretty confident around most haunted spaces, even ones that people say have dark energy. I have my own energy and I feel pretty solid in it. Mm-hmm. So I don't carry a lot of anxiety about that, and I have to give my parents credit. That's how I was raised. Wow. I was raised not to be afraid. I was raised to understand there's a spirit world, and that I, if I chose, could be a spirit guide. But that said, I don't. And also, I know these two animals. They were all cozied in for the night, and they live here full time. So right. I imagine that they have encountered the footsteps on the stairs more than once. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I was going to ask if you think it was residual or intelligent. I think would have creeped me out a little bit. And I have been also in an 1800s house that my grandparents owned, and as a little kid, and upstairs in the quote unquote pink room. And there was a time though when I was really young though when I saw these shadow feet. They kept the hallway light on, or the of the upstairs, just in case we needed to come down during the night for, go to the restroom. But there was a time when I did see shadow feet underneath kind of the door, and it just I just rolled over and threw the covers over my head. But do you think that the energy that you encountered, was your door open? People probably want to know, was your door open? Was it closed? Yes. Door was open. Yep.
And how far do you think this, I'm not sure if it was residual or intelligent, but how far do you think it went from you?
This staircase is the staircase. Mm-hmm. The room is against that wall right there. Mm-hmm. And it was very close. Mm-hmm. And I felt absolutely no fear. I'm almost positive it was residual. Mm-hmm. I have felt like there was an intelligent energy here before. One time I was trying to do a recording, and it just kept messing with me, and I finally just very politely said, I really need to finish my work. If you want to talk to me, can we do it later once I finish my work on deadline? And then there was no more interference. Everything just cleared up. I will definitely talk to spirit energy. I am very direct. And, if they want to talk to me, it's fine. But, I'm going to approach them with respect, and I want to be approached with respect as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just noticing the stairs. My great grandfather built a house that had stairs identical to those types. They're very narrow, and
they're very narrow.
They are.
They're like about that wide.
Yep, and they're tricky to walk up, and you don't want to slip on those because then you'll be coming right on down within a heartbeat. And I kind of wonder. I don't know if their feet were that small back then, or why they were so. Why couldn't they have made them just a little wider? I've always just wondered about that, but I don't know. It's very fascinating, but it's part of the history. Let's go back to your beginnings and your history. So how old were you when you first came into, I don't say your knowing, but just something intrigued you or something captivated you, and then from that point on you started to come into your awakening and things were happening? How young and what happened?
Well, like I said, I was raised by very non-conventional parents, and I was taught that there is a spirit world, there are ghosts around us, and not to worry about it, that they're going their own way and doing their own thing, and unless they approach me, to mind my business. So that's kind of how I looked at it. But when I was 8 years old, I grew up in a town called York, Pennsylvania. And when I was 8 years old, my parents took me to York, England, which is the much older place that York, Pennsylvania was named for. And we were at dinner one night at a place called Marmaduke's. It was an Italian restaurant in the old part of the city. And I went upstairs to use the restroom on an old rickety staircase, which was even windier than this one. And I can still remember the staircase quite well. And I saw a young man, and he was a full form spectral figure. It was the first time I had seen one. And it didn't strike me so much that I was seeing a ghost. It struck me that he was really distressed and upset. I could just feel how sad he was. Like, the sadness was palpable. And I immediately thought, well, I need to help him. I need to get my mom. So I went back down the stairs and got mom, and I brought her up, and he was gone. And turns out he was the regular ghost there, that he was a residual energy. But we found a server and said there was a young man upstairs, and now he seems to be gone, and he kind of looked like a ghost. And she's like, oh, you saw Marmaduke. Was it in the room right next to the bathrooms? And I said, yes. And she's like, oh no, what did you see? Oh. And I said, I saw him sitting on a chair, and he was very sad and looked like that he was crying. And she's like, I'm really glad you didn't see the whole broadcast. The rest of the broadcast is him climbing onto the chair and taking his own life.
Oh, gee.
And I guess I walked away right at that moment to go get my mom. And it turns out Marmaduke Buckle was the haunting. And he was a real person who lived there in the 1600s, which was, of course, during there was a lot of tumultuous history in England, but that was during the witch trials. And because he was a special needs person, like today we would say that he had some mental and emotional challenges. Back then they said he was a witch because he was different, and he was slated to be executed. But he wanted to save his family from shame, so he took his own life instead. Wow. In the house, in that room, by knocking the chair down. And I guess it was just a stroke of good luck, or maybe somebody else who guided me out of the room, that I didn't see that part as an 8-year-old child. I just saw the very beginning of his residual repetition.
Did he look translucent to
Yes.
you? He did. Okay, but you could see enough of his features and his sadness.
He wasn't black and white. I could see him in color, but it was not like seeing, like this chair in front of me. I could tell something was different. I knew something was going on. But like I said, the overwhelming feeling was the sadness, the deep grief. And that's actually what kind of hung with me from the entire experience was his grief. And I honestly think that's part of how I became interested in history. I didn't understand why he had to do that, you know, and I wanted to know more about that time in history of what happened.
Yeah, well, and that's what sparks our interest in these things that we run into, which is you're very young to, I mean, people do have experiences at that age. However, how interesting to actually not run into them, but have that. Was the chair, I should ask, was the chair that he would eventually stood on and hung himself, was that an existing chair, or was that also translucent?
It was also part of the repetition. It was not there. The room itself, they kept it empty. Like there were no boxes of extra tomato sauce or anything. It was literally just an empty room that they kept empty on purpose because his spirit repeated so often that there was no point in keeping anything in the room.
Yeah.
The other thing I really remember very well about that room is it was a wooden floor that was warped.
Yeah.
And it actually curved down. It was really a unique looking floor to me at that time in my life because I hadn't been in very many historic buildings yet.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Up until that point, though, correct me if I'm wrong, did you, through your own family experiences or through the knowledge of learning from them, that things could possibly be a ghost or whatever? You know, I think when I was younger, I think I did ask the question at some point, what is a ghost? You know, but it never came up in my family. It came up in school. And so the thing is, it's like, oh, I'm so glad someone's talking about this or something on TV or whatever, right? And so do you have any discussions about this, like seriously, with your mother or your father or your grandparents before you actually saw that image of that kid?
You know, I don't remember exactly, but I do remember being told a ghost was just a person who was between bodies.
Yeah.
Like literally.
Yeah.
That's what they told me, which I don't know 50 years ago that they could have explained a residual to me at that point. I think that they were talking more about intelligent hauntings.
Exactly.
And I wouldn't learn that for many years later. And, you know, of course, I remember growing up with like the Charlie Brown special where they all dressed up as ghosts and Charlie Brown had that one with like too many eyes, you know. So, I mean, there was that awareness of how society thought about ghosts and hauntings. And, you know, scary books and movies and things like that. But my parents were always very careful to tell me, if you read it in a book or see it in a movie, it is fiction. It's not real. It's somebody's imagining. It isn't necessarily how something really happens.
So now you have
which is true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it's very true. That's right. I mean, people have their perception of something that has just happened to them. I've had many things that have happened to me, and I can only describe them as I've perceived them and what my brain makes sense out of them at the time. And, you know, I could be sitting right next to my husband and he won't see a thing, you know, or he won't. And that's the next question I have for you. So here you have a visual experience at that age, and you're telling your mom or dad and all that. And did they ever say that you had the same abilities as someone else in the family that goes back, you know, some generations? Anything?
Not specifically. Not specifically, but they had both seen apparitions before and had experiences with different things. As I mean, my grandparents are all passed now, but I know that the one time I remember talking to my grandmother and her saying that she had experiences like that and other paranormal experiences as well. So, it was just never a big deal. Yeah. It was just never, a big deal was never made.
Right. Yeah. No, but that's true. I mean, I know from my grandmother, nope. Very diehard Catholic. No, it's angel or devil. Nothing in between. No, this house is not haunted. Yes, your house is haunted. No, this house is not haunted. And so, believe me, I brought up the question. I did ask her, so with the shadow feet, I said, did you come upstairs last night just to listen at the door? Because I yelled out, but nobody responded back like, yeah, let's let us go to sleep. No, nothing. And that was the creepy part, when you don't get a response to the question that you're asking. But that's what I was curious about. But no, in my family, definitely. But a few years ago, I was with my cousin with the same grandmother, obviously, and my grandmother wasn't alive anymore, but we talked about what I was doing, which was paranormal work, and then it finally came out that there was a discussion at one point on the maternal side of our family, my family, that they do believe that some people have had some psychic abilities or gifts or experiences. But you know what? If it doesn't reach your main artery, you just never ever realize that until somebody spills the beans. So now you're coming into, or you've already been into, your awakening a little bit. You actually had your first visual, or probably more than that, and other things, but that you're actually really grasping onto. What next? So what happens now? Are you strengthening in your abilities? What comes next?
So what comes next is that the town I live in, it gets hit by the satanic panic. And all of a sudden, it is not safe to talk about those things anywhere. Remember that I also come from a family of tarot readers. So all of a sudden, these things that were normalized to me at a very young age, as I hit, say, my teens, early teens and into my teens, suddenly it is not safe to talk about these things or to bring them up or to tell friends or anything like that. So there's this societal fear that people are involved with the devil. And it definitely hit the town where I grew up very, very hard. I wasn't even allowed to go to one of my favorite parks anymore because the police were on the watch out for, alleged Satanists murdering chickens. Always with the chickens, right? So there was a period of forced silence. This is the only thing I can describe it as. And then that led me into a different part of my life, which is important now that I had to go through these phases. This different part of my life where I became a very logical and rational person. In fact, I went into journalism. I became so fact-driven. And which definitely makes me a very different kind of investigator now. But it was a necessary path for me, but it was a 180. Right? It was a 180 from growing up in this very spiritual path with an herb garden and tarot cards and ghosts are around and just be respectable. And then suddenly I became much more I want to see the facts only and show me the data. Yep. Show me the data for everything. Yeah. And I went through that period of my life. I became a journalist. I became an editor. And then there was always this piece of me that was still the sensitive and curious, and never really stopped believing, ever. Even through the times when I couldn't prove things, I was never a non-believer. I was kind of a closeted believer. And the satanic panic comes and goes, and we all move on with our lives. And there's always this part of me that's sort of longing to go back to who I am, who I really am. And I did. I eventually did. And that took a lot of different forms initially. I used to keep my, say I went somewhere, I would go to New York, I'd get Haunted Greenwich Village, the book, and I would be like, don't show anybody I have this, but I'm going to read it, But I finally was just this is just who I am, and it has to be okay. And it's a whole lot easier to exist that way in the world, to just be who you are.
Yeah, actually, yes, because I also kind of went through my own trials and tribulations like that growing up, and I started out one way, and then I went into that very fact-driven type of person and everything because of the degrees that I had as well. But you know what? I was in the paranormal closet for a long time, and I was having a lot of experiences. And back in my day, you're crazy, or you need to go into a stretch jacket or whatever, or go to a psychologist, or you need to be zapped or something of that sort. That was my growing up. So you almost had to keep it quiet so you didn't find yourself being labeled as someone who you actually probably were coming into your knowing, but people just did not understand that at all. So I always say to people, I was in the paranormal closet until 2016, when I was finally at the point I was getting to retirement, my stage. And basically what I did is I wrote my first book. I couldn't take it anymore. I started writing everything down. And then guess what? I probably have never been happier. I hate to say it, but doing this type of work, or trying to understand it and utilizing everything that I know. I don't know. So there was a point where you probably became a reader, right? And what made you decide to do that?
Well, I was always a reader. I was just in the closet as a reader. So I grew up as a reader, and I did a reading this morning. I have it's just part of who I am. I have Roma in my background. I have Scottish in my background. There are so many people who have been diviners and seers in my background. Of course, I was going to also do that. And when I was you'll think this is silly. When I was about 16, I decided to be rebellious, that I wasn't going to read tarot cards anymore. I was going to learn something else, because that's what my family did, and I had to do something different.
Right.
And quite coincidentally, that year, my mom got me a fancy cup and tea, loose tea, for the holidays. And the tea ball broke because it was a piece of crap. I don't know if you remember, tea balls used to be like those wire things that you had to kind of pinch. Yep. It broke literally the first time I used it, as I think they all did. And the tea was loose in the cup. And as I drank the tea down, because I wasn't going to throw that away, it was way too precious all those years ago, I started to see shapes on the side of the cup. I mean, it was clear as day to me that I was looking first at a cat and then a basket of flowers. And my mom said, well, you're a tea leaf reader. What else do you see? It did take me a long time to learn to read tea leaves. I'm not going to say I just picked it up immediately. It was definitely an art and a craft to it. But I started making drawings of the things I saw. And over time, I assigned meaning to them based on the feeling I got when I looked at them. So if you ever talk to another tea leaf reader, you will find we are all different. We all read shapes differently. We all divine differently. We often end up in the same place. Like, we might tell you the same information, but how we get there is going to be a whole set of different roads, because it's a very personal practice. So I became a tea leaf reader. I never read for the public until I hit my late 30s, I think. It took that long. And I did it very gradually at first. It had been a private practice for me for a long time, something I did literally just for myself. And to this day, I don't read for anybody that's really close to me. I feel like I will not be unbiased if I read for a family member or close friend. But that said, I have been doing it since then publicly, and I do love it. Sometimes it's difficult. Some readings are harder than others. So tea leaf reading is completely open-ended. Everything is on the table when you read a teacup, because the tea can take any shape.
That's interesting. I haven't had one done yet, and I'm going to have you be my very first person doing that. I had a bone reading done, about a year or so ago, but it was it wasn't what I was expecting, and I'm talking about the types of things that were thrown out on the table, and then kind of middle-maddled through it and all that, or I can't even remember anymore how it went. But Rissa is correct. Everybody has a different way of reading things. Tarot cards, dice, teacups, and everything you can imagine, and they see things differently. I mean, I know a gal she's a psychic, and she sees like movie clips in her head. She sees beach scenes, and she sees this and that, and from that she's able to interpret what those things mean to her. So I'm going to ask you the same thing. So you're seeing this. Do you see flashes? Do you see visions? What exactly? Are you in a trance? When you're doing this, how do you get to that place to be able to see something?
It's definitely almost like a meditative state. It is not my usual way of seeing. Like, I don't drive in the same way, if that makes sense. There are no flashes. I sort of fall into the mindset that I use when I read, and I just sort of flow. It's almost like, I know that they talk about how artists fall into like a creative flow. It feels like that. It feels like that. Like when a writer writes and you get into that creative flow and suddenly you didn't realize that 3 hours went by. It feels similar to that sort of a flow state to me when I'm reading. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a trance, because movies have made that into something different, but it's definitely a meditative state, and it is... it's almost like a softened way of perceiving, that you have to be willing to receive information instead of just pushing it out all the time. And are you picking this up from the Akashic records, or do you feel you're making a connection with some kind of spirit guide or higher power, or someone is helping to feed this information to you? Because everybody I've talked with, they have a different way of receiving this information. Who do you think you're receiving the information from? I ask for the ancestors of who I am reading for to make sure I get the clear messages that they want sent. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. That excites me, because there's some information that and have you found that there's sometimes when you can't get that information pulled from them? Because I know I've got a lot of questions for, my ancestors, a couple of them for sure. And you'd be great if we could get down to the bottom of it. But sometimes will they close the curtain or not want to say anything, or what happens then? So sometimes they tell you the things that they want you to hear that aren't necessarily the things that you want to hear. A lot of people get the message like, you need to stop doing this particular habit. And they're like, that's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear where, Aunt Susie's old trunk ended up. Like that. They're not going to tell you that today. What they're going to tell you is what you need to hear to live your life in a way that they're trying to help you move in the right direction. Sometimes the information is difficult to convey because it is really emotionally challenging for them, for the ancestors and for the person receiving the messages. It can be things like, I did a reading recently where I got these messages like, your husband's actually the problem. For the woman I was reading with, like, your husband's actually the problem, and he's probably lying to you. And he's probably lying about what he's doing with his female friend. And she's like, well, I kind of thought that there was a female friend, and I kind of thought that he was lying. I was like, well, great. So they're confirming what you already know. And it's difficult for me sometimes to put the information out, but when I look in a teacup and I can obviously see what's happening, sometimes it's so obvious you don't need a tea leaf reader to interpret it. I've had words spelled out in teacups. I had a young lady once who came to me for a reading, and she was like, I'm stuck in my career, and I'm stuck in my apartment building, and all these things in my life aren't going forward. And the teacup literally had MOVE spelled out in it. Like, I just turned it and showed it to her. I was like, so you simply need to take action. Like, I don't know if you need to start putting resumes out for a new job or looking for a new apartment or house, but just do something. Do something. Act. Just don't dream about it. Oh, and it can be difficult, especially in our world, to be able to to do that. It's like a fantasy that we all, well, maybe not all of us, but a fantasy that a lot of us sometimes wish about, especially when you're in a job and you feel like, this is just a drag. And boy, I'll tell you, once you get to retirement though, and you can kind of write your own script, hopefully you can
can write your own script. I know I did. I just feel a lot better emotionally, physically, the whole 10 yards, the whole whatever. That's fascinating that spelled that out in that teacup, because I'm trying to figure out how on earth that did that, but does that ever surprise you?
Not anymore. But honestly, I would say in the past few years, there's been a lot of stagnation in people's readings. Yeah. And I think everybody has felt this sort of like energetic sludginess that has been going around everywhere. Because I read remotely for most of my clients. I have clients in other parts of the world, and it's not like just a thing that people are experiencing in the United States. Everybody is feeling this slimy energy that seems to be attached to us right now. Yeah. So, and it's not personal; it's just happening. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we're a universal collective, ultimately. So we're almost like a breathing, almost human being when you think about it, because a lot of times we can all feel and sense things, and we do make comments about it. We think it's just us, but no, if you talk to other people, you might be very surprised to learn.
Absolutely.
That we're all kind of collectively having this feeling. And sometimes when the world is up and happy, you can kind of feel that too. And when the world's down and miserable, and so that's interesting. You also do another kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a reading, but you do a smoke scrying, and I thought you might want to explain that a little bit.
Sure. So that is considered a fairly esoteric way of reading, but it's also one of the most ancient ways of reading. Like ever since people have had fire, they've been gazing into the flames and into the smoke, looking for symbols and patterns. So the way it works is very simple for me to describe. You gaze into smoke and you look for patterns. And now it takes a lot of focus. It is definitely a thing that you can't be looking also at something else. There can't be any other sound. And you actually have to have the right circumstance. So I like to do it with a black wall that also has a light from above. And that backlights the smoke and makes it easier to see. My eyes aren't as young as they once were. So let's be real. There's always a practical thing too, right? So that said, you gaze into smoke and you look for patterns. It moves really fast, really, really fast. It is probably the most challenging of the various forms of divination I practice because it is so quick. For clients, I often will take pictures or quick videos to show them the pattern, and sometimes it is clear as day in a picture or a short video, but if you're watching it like scroll by you really quick, it's super easy to miss. But the thing about smoke is that it will answer you in real time. Once you get a spirit there talking to you, they shape the smoke very fast and it comes right through. I generally use cone incense to do mine, but I also do soot drawings from a lit candle where the pattern's coming up from the smoke attached to a piece of paper. And this is going to sound funny, but it has to be kind of a junky candle because smokeless wicks don't work for this, right? You have to have a wick that's a little bit junky in order to have soot. And you also can't have a glossy paper. It has to have texture to capture it. So again, there's some technicalities, but then once you have that, the patterns sort of just show up on the page from how the smoke hits it. And I use the same set of symbols that I use for tea leaf reading to interpret smoke symbols.
Interesting. I'm going to have that done with you too. Would you say that the tea leaf reading and the smoke one gives the same result?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you not advise someone to get both of them, or would you just advise get one of them if they wanted to have some kind of a reading done with you?
Get one at a time. I actually like to have time between readings. I know some readers say to do it every week or every month. I do not. My readings are complex and they are long, and it takes about 6 months to a year for someone to live through all of the information given in one of my readings. Wow. And I won't read again for you before 6 months. I just won't do it.
Yeah. When I was younger, I was a psychic junkie, as they say, because I lived by that to help me get through and process my life, not only just my life, but my world that I was experiencing. It was so difficult. And I had a few readers that did say, I'll see you in 6 months if you need another one in 6 months. And they did do time, because you can become very obsessed, and you can become very, I want to use the word addicted, but addicted to wanting information or trying to figure out what's coming through, and that leads me to the next question to you. I do know somebody, I interviewed him quite a while ago, but he had told me he had done like 13,000 readings, and he was completely burnt out. And so I'm just wondering, what is the effect like on you? Do you have to recharge? Do you feel pretty drained? Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. What happens to you?
So if I'm doing big readings like tea and smoke, I only do 4 in a day. I used to do up to 8, and I would be so tired, especially with all of the very intense looking. My eyes would be so exhausted I couldn't drive. Mm-hmm. So it took a physical toll as well as a mental and emotional one. So I have learned to set limits and boundaries around them. Mm-hmm. And to also give myself breaks in between. So if I set up a reading day, there's at least 15 minutes in between readings for me to kind of like get a snack or go to the bathroom or just clear my head, clear the room, whatever needs to be done in between. Some readings are really fun and I have a great time doing them. Other readings are so emotionally heavy that I need a moment to catch my breath to go into the next one, or even just to go into making dinner. Mm-hmm. That has different effects. So days when I do quick open public readings, like with tarot, and you mentioned that you had an osteomancy reading. I also do claromancy, which I do casting with crystals. Mm-hmm. And with both tarot and claromancy, I can do quick 10 to 15 minute readings for people. But after you've done like 20 or so of those, your brain is done. You're just done.
I don't even know how to pull it to begin with. I mean, I'm just amazed. Now, I know I'm like borderline. I have a lot of abilities, and I have they come and they leave, but they pretty much come on when I'm very, very low energy, low depressed. I mean, all of a sudden that I'm activated, and I can tell you just about any result or what's going to happen or things like that. So, and I have a very strange connection with electronics, especially slot machines and casinos. I can't even explain it. I just know it happens. So that's why I'm so amazed at how you can do so many, because you just get done with one person and you have to clear your slate, and then somehow you're back into another person. And yeah, it can be a lot of people that are miserable, or I'm not using it that way, feel miserable for various reasons. Let me state it that way. Gosh, that could be just awfully draining. I don't know. So,
it's funny. Very few people end up talking to a psychic of any type or a seer because things are going great. I can actually think of only 2 people in all the years I've been doing this that they showed up at my table and they were like, things are going great. Are they going to keep going great? Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, like, that's so refreshing. That's so different. It's usually they show up because there's money trouble, or they're unhappy with their job, or their neighbor's driving them nuts, or their partner's driving them nuts, or their child or parent or whatever, or like their animal companion is ill. There's certain things you see a lot. And I would say the things you see the most are money, career, and love problems.
Exactly.
Love being the whole realm, like family and partners. But you see those things the most because people are living with uncertainty in those situations.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they're just trying to manage the risk in their life with as little pain as possible. And I get it. That makes sense to me too.
Yep, that's the way I was. That's the way I was for a long, long time. I've dealt with psychics for 40 years, and it started somewhere. But oddly enough, though, not all psychics are the same. Some are better at certain things than others, and then unfortunately, you get scarred by the 1% out there, like any profession or any type of situation, where somebody kind of leads they give somebody a bad experience,
Right.
And so,
or there are some unethical people in every profession. There are unethical psychics, but there are also unethical accountants too.
Yeah.
So there.
Yeah, and be careful about, and I don't know what your practice is, but I'm just going to forewarn everybody about additional services. Some of them that I have gone to have wanted to, and I will burn this candle for you, for a month and blah, 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 but they never burned the candle, and I never ever bought the additional service, but it's like they were very, very good at the reading and enough to kind of bring you in, right? But
I don't do that.
Yeah,
I mean, if I decide to burn a candle for someone, I do it privately.
Yeah.
Like if I have a client who I felt like needs a little extra support, I'm not going to tell them I'm doing it. I'm going to simply do it.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no fee. I mean, if I have room in my heart for you, I have room in my heart for you, and that's that.
Yep. Yep, and that's where hopefully at least one of you listening or watching this program today, kind of you're a little bit careful, or maybe you are the psychic that offers additional services for a fee. I don't really, from an ethics standpoint, I don't like that. So, that's why I just kind of bring it up. But I have had...
And depending where you are, it's illegal.
Yeah. I didn't even know that. See, that's interesting. I didn't know that at all. So hopefully someone has learned something from this type of conversation here. Very good. Glad you brought that up. So I can't remember right offhand. Did you say you also do tours?
I do. I'm not a full-time reader. I honestly don't want to be. I don't want to do readings full-time. I think that would emotionally wring me out, much like the other psychic you interviewed. Yeah. I think being a full-time seer would be too much.
Yeah.
I am also a public historian, and I do lectures and tours all over the East Coast. I've done them as far away as Portland, Oregon, of course, Salem, Mass, Atlanta, Georgia, and I love talking about the funny little niches and dark spots in history. So I'm a ghost tour guide in 2 different towns, one in Maryland and one in Pennsylvania. I love telling the stories of ghosts, and I think that many of them like having their stories told.
Oh, yeah.
It's from a history standpoint, I love taking a ghost tour because it puts a face on history. I mean, we've all been in that classroom where a well-meaning teacher or professor made history so boring that we could barely stay awake.
Yeah.
But if you put the face of a ghost on history, it's not boring anymore. It's now somebody's life and death that you're talking about in context of what happened and why they were relevant or how it affected them. And as you can tell, I get very excited about how we can learn from these stories as well as experience them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that I often wonder about, and I think you might, I'm not sure, I'm going to ask. So you're out giving a tour, and it's probably dark out, or maybe you do it during the daytime too. I don't know. Do you
Both.
Both? Okay.
Both.
Have you ever had an experience, considering you're also very psychic and sensitive?
Oh, yes.
So if somebody's joining in on the party here. Mm-hmm. But I guess I'm gonna ask 2 questions. The first question I'm gonna ask is, you're giving this tour, whatever. Have you ever had an experience with something joining the party? Let's start with that.
All right. So just last fall, we did a special tour in York, Pennsylvania. We called it Ghost Hunters Night. Mm-hmm. And we brought a paranormal investigator with equipment along. It was an active night. We had activity at 2 different places, not the places that I expected, actually. Mm-hmm. I sometimes walk my tour path and talk to my ghosts ahead of time. I always let them know, like, we're doing a tour, just to let you know, like, if you want to be around, great. And if you don't, there's going to be a tour, So I do tell them my intentions. And at the end of season, when we close down for the winter, I always walk through and let them know we're done for the year. And, to cozy in, it's going to be a chilly, long winter. Mm-hmm. So that said, on Ghost Hunters Night last year, which was, I believe, September 29th, and it was scheduled thusly because of International Ghost Hunters Day. So because of that, we had our ghost hunter friend along, Jessica, and Jessica had all of her equipment. And the, what are they called? Spirit boxes at one location. All three were going off with the same woman's voice, and it actually was tear-jerking. She was so lonely. She was so confused. She didn't know what happened to her son. She didn't know why she was still there. And we knew that that building had this female haunting. We knew that she was a very proper woman, and because I had taken a male psychic in, and she wouldn't talk to him because she didn't know him. She didn't know that gentleman. And I was like, all right, I guess I should have thought more about this in context of the time that she lived. But that's why it's important to know your history when you're out there doing a paranormal investigation. But that said, as we turned to go to the next site, because we did have a schedule to keep, she started saying, please don't go. And all three boxes lit up with this desperate plea to stay and talk to her. And every single one of us, you could feel everybody in the group like hit like by her loneliness and her sadness. And she didn't have anybody to talk to for a long time until we showed up with the spirit boxes, you know? So on a happy twist, the woman who owns a shop in that space got a spirit box so that she can chat with her ghost from time to time. Now, the spirit doesn't always come through, but sometimes they talk. So I thought that was a great result of that. And the same night, of course, I didn't get to see her, but there was a full spectral apparition on the balcony of a Victorian mansion. So we know that it's an active spirit. A lot of people have photographed her face in the window. And it is in a house called the Bonham House. And it is a beautiful old place, but it's been empty a long time. The Historical Society is still trying to raise funds to reopen it to the public, but it got very difficult to maintain it. As I'm sure you know, maintaining historic spaces and museums cost a fortune. And there just aren't that many people around right now who want to dump money into maintaining a Victorian mansion as a museum. So they had to close it down for safety. And unfortunately, that meant the ghost spends a lot of time alone. And she literally walked out onto her balcony, and three people saw her. Nobody was able to grab their phone fast enough, but they were like screaming and gasping. And like those of us who had already walked on down the street came running back. And they were like, we saw her. She walked out, and I guess it was only for the flash of a few seconds, but they all described her identically. And I honestly wasn't super surprised because, like I said, her apparition has shown up in windows during tours. And she was willing to talk to a psychic, and she was just like, I don't understand why people don't come to my house anymore. You know, she was like, I want people to see my house and my father's beautiful paintings and all the things that I collected in my travels. And it is a beautiful house. I was a tour guide there many years ago because I also just love history. Like I said, I think it was Marmaduke that made me fall in love with history way in my childhood. So that one night we had those two amazing things happen. Honestly, either one of them would have been more than enough for me to be like, this was a win, but instead we got two huge things within the course of 2 hours.
That is absolutely amazing. I'm wondering if there wasn't something going on those couple days, because September 28th is my birthday, and we were in a historic train car last year for my birthday. That was my birthday present. And I captured in the hallway, I just felt there was something in there, but the place wasn't known, at least not until now, that it seems to have a few hanging around. And I managed to capture a shadow person, and then I was able to filter it, and it appeared to be a woman not facing me, with her back turned to me, long brown hair, wearing a coat of some sort, facing my very faint shadow, because I shot the photograph at 3200 ISO, so there was no flash. It was just, but there were some mirrors in there. And anyway, long story short, I started shaking because I asked my husband, is this train car by chance haunted, because I just photographed something in the hallway. And of course he's not going to say I have no idea or yes or whatever or not believe in it. I was actually trembling to capture that, but it was the 28th when you captured yours on the 29th. How interesting. Right. And I don't know if you remember the elements outside that night. It was pretty clear, very, very sparkly, where I was at, very sparkly stars, moon. I think we even had a little bit of a northern lights activity, just a little bit, and something just seemed very electrified. How was your night? Do you remember it being that,
I remember it being very clear and cool and like a comfortable night to be outside walking around. And I remember feeling very high energy that night. I'm always pretty high energy as a general rule. That's just my personality. But I was extra ready to go that night. And I don't remember what phase the moon was in. I'd have to look that up. But I do remember it was a very clear, absolutely perfect night for walking around. I think that York, Pennsylvania, which is a breath away from Gettysburg, and in between Gettysburg and Lancaster, two known hotspots for cryptid and ghost activity, is severely underrated. I imagine one of these days some big investigative team is going to figure it out and come snatch it away from me. But that said, in the meantime, I have dozens of people that tell me their experiences and their stories. And in the meantime, it's this area that's on the same bedrock as Gettysburg that connects to all these different places where there's deep history, and so many rivers converge and things like that. I'm not sure why the paranormal community hasn't found it, but it's okay, because I'm there now, and I'm finding these stories and sharing them with other people. So it's a good spot, and there's a lot happening there.
Yeah, your area out there, though, that area in and of itself. I mean, there are hot spots and hotbeds a lot of places in the U.S., but particularly out there. Now, when I went to Gettysburg, as an example, I don't know, I was looking for something to, stand there or make itself known to me or whatever. I don't recall having any experience at all when I was there.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. That's very unusual, considering I was expecting to have something. Now, maybe it would be different now. I don't know why. Maybe it would be different, but it seems like people do seem to have some type of experience, especially in Gettysburg. But where you're talking... Yeah, I know. It's just so crazy. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I just don't know why I didn't have anything. Maybe I was looking too hard for it. Some people are looking for something particular, and that's my next question to you. So when you lead these groups, have you ever noticed yet any kind of an apparition joining the crowd that you can visually see, but the others standing around them, they don't know, they can't see anybody standing within the group? Have you ever had that yet?
All right, so I'm hesitant to answer that question because I don't want people to be afraid to come. But so absolutely, they do come and listen. They absolutely come and listen. And I actually noticed that first on a ghost tour in Maine. I was not leading it. I was a guest, and I looked over and there was a woman standing there, and then she wasn't. And I was like, that's her. That's who we're talking about. That's the woman who was murdered in this house. Oh. I knew exactly who she was. And she was just kind of like, oh, look at these people who came to talk about me. It wasn't a frightening experience. I almost felt kind of reverent about it, I sort of was like, oh, I'm so glad that she chose to come out and see that she's being remembered. Because, I mean, without getting too deep into it, so much of women in history is just not recorded. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of women aren't even recorded by their own names. They're recorded by the names of their fathers or their husbands. And to be able to tell the story of a woman whose only memory is the fact that something terrible happened to her and she's a ghost. Yeah. I mean, that's how we get so many of these like vague lady in black, lady in gray like stories, is because so many women weren't known by their own name. Yeah. And I mean, that's a fascinating piece of history, and it links into ghost lore really strongly. So as a woman, I love being able to share these women's stories, and the fact that she came out onto the tour and stood there sort of like, I'm proud that they're telling my story in front of this house where my violent husband killed me. I was glad that she got to know that we were there and remembered her. So yes, people have picked up. I have had other mediums on my tours in both Maryland and Pennsylvania, and they have absolutely picked up that there are entities that either step out or walk along a little bit. That I know of, no entities taken my full tour anywhere, but they do know that we're there, and they do come out sometimes and listen.
That's interesting. I mean, I know that like here, there is a report of, we have a really big state fair. And so we get a lot of people. I think we're number one in the United States as of right now. That in Texas, we're neck and neck. And so, but there was a report once. I think I interviewed somebody who said that this apparition would be sitting out in we call it the band shell, which is nothing more than a performance area where people sit on bleachers and stuff and watch whoever's performing on stage. And every year this old woman would come and she would be sitting in the exact same chair, watching the performance every year. And I just often wonder what it might feel like for her to be sat on. She probably doesn't feel anything, but here's this woman, she's watching the performance. Someone says, oh, there she is again. I can see Gladys. She died 5-6 years ago, but there she is, right? And then all of a sudden some comes and just sits right on top of you. I don't know. I know they don't feel it probably, but I just think it'd be kind of weird, or they probably move along or whatever. I don't know.
Or they do feel it. I have collected a lot of stories of people who walk through apparitions and suddenly feel dizzy or nauseated, or they get a headache, or they feel how that person died suddenly in their body. That all happens. And then of course there are people who don't feel anything from apparitions. I mean, that exists too. There's just a different kind of person. Yeah. So I think it depends on who sits on Gladys, really. Like somebody might sit on Gladys and be like, oh, I don't feel so good all of a sudden.
Exactly.
Or, I'm dizzy.
Yeah. Well, I have walked through, and I do get the sensation. I don't know if you get this sensation. I electrify, and so I tingle really, really badly. It's like, and I'm just tingly all over, and I'm just like, oh my God, like energy is all over me. And I have walked through, and I have felt sick, and I have felt dizzy, and I have all of that. And there was a place in Astoria. I think it's Washington. We went to this historic house, and I just, honest to God, couldn't believe myself. We walked upstairs. We were in this room. I had no idea. Apparently, this apparition would always show in this room. I was standing nearby or on top of it, went down to the gift shop area. They had a book on this place, and I was flipping the page, and I came right to it and said, I'll just use the word Charlie. Yeah, Charlie shows up on the 3rd floor. He likes to stand right in the middle of the whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, I stood on top of him. You know, one of the things that I find very, very interesting, in addition to, I guess I would like to call them hitchhikers, those that somehow show up in places. Have you ever had a situation before with anything that might not feel as good, you know, negative, something where you're going, maybe we should move along, or maybe we should get out of here? Anything like that?
Well, you know, I have had one, but it wasn't during a tour program. It was after a tour program. I was in Maryland, and I had just finished up a tour on Main Street in Ellicott City, and I was walking back to my car at the end of the night. So on that walk, I go past the old jail. And the old jail is closed to the public. It's been closed for a very long time. It has a historic building, but it is not open for, you know, walking through like a museum. And there's definitely a lot of dark energy around it. I have not personally seen shadow people around it, but others have. And like many old jails, it has that sort of ickiness to it. Mm-hmm. So there was a young lady standing on the bridge overlooking the jail, which you have to cross to get to the parking area. Mm-hmm. And she was absolutely mesmerized. Like, she couldn't pull her eyes away from the jail. And I had a feeling that she was seeing the purple lights. So sometimes this abandoned empty building has these interior and sometimes exterior, but usually inside, bright purple lights that light up in the windows. And I did see them for a second, and she was convinced that she needed to climb down there and go to the jail. Huh. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. Well, A, it's illegal. Like, if the cops come by, you're gonna get in trouble for trespassing. And B, absolutely not. You know, whatever they're calling you down there for, it's a no. And I was like, sweetie, is your car up here? She's like, yeah. I was like, great, I'm gonna walk you to it and put you in it. Mm-hmm. And I did, but I hope that she left. I saw her get in her car and drive away, but that was as much as I could do. I hope she didn't decide to try to drive back to the jail, but it definitely had this very eerie, very terrifying feeling around it. Like, it was literally luring her down there for some reason. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they wanted her. She couldn't have gotten inside. There was no way. I mean, there are huge, big chains and locks on the doors of the jail. They couldn't have pulled her into it. Mm-hmm. But that said, it was a very frightening feeling that they were pulling her so very effectively. She had no idea of any of the ghost stories or any of the history. She didn't even know what the building was when I said the old jail. She was very confused. She did not appear to be drunk or under the influence of any drugs. She was just literally mesmerized by what was going on and pulling her into the space. So that's probably the scariest experience I've personally had out in the world with the paranormal. And I realize that actually makes me very lucky. But I think also I've been told by investigators and others that because I don't seek out what's bad, I don't get it. It just doesn't come to me.
Yeah.
It knows it's not going to find a home with me. So...
You know, that's interesting, but you know what? It reminds me of a story when my students, a student of mine, I was a college professor for many years, and yeah, we were talking about, I think my experience, possibly, not sure, with Zach Bagan's hotel, because it's a long story, but I shut the place down. It's pretty nasty in there. But I had a student who told me in class once that he had a real obsession in wanting to go up to Gary, Indiana, where Zach Bagan's had purchased this house that had this very strange and unusual activity going on in it, to the point where it made the news, and this kid was walking up the side of the wall inside the living room or in there backwards, and just really crazy. And I said to him, you can't go up there. you can't go into that house. You'll be trespassing. I'm sure he's got ways of, knowing when someone is trespassing on that property. And the kid said to me, it was like he was in just a complete whatever. He was like, I don't care. He says, there's something calling me up there and I've got to get into that house. That's all I know. Now, I had, after that point, I can't remember if we had, I think that was like maybe one of the final days of class, because I don't know if he went up there. I advised him not to, but yet some people are so drawn to some of this stuff. And I know I've been drawn back to my great-grandparents and my grandparents' property to do a lot of ghost hunting or searching or experiencing, which I had plenty of. But that's very kind of interesting how just something like that structure just absolutely captivated her to the point where you don't know. I mean, once your tour's done, I guess everything is at their own risk, just like class was done, everything's at his own risk. But isn't that interesting? And have you ever not yourself been drawn to something? I think you might have said you haven't been, but do you remember any time you being so interested in something that you just wanted to, I don't know, continue to go back to it? Have you ever been in that situation?
I haven't. I can't even think of a single time. I wish I could give you a good story, but there isn't one.
No,
I have certain ghosts I like to visit, but it's usually because I like to hang out with them.
Yep.
Like there's a ghost named Charlie at the old B&O railroad station. I like to go and visit Charlie. It's not a bad thing. It's not an obsession. I can go months between visits. So, it is an interesting thing though when that strange obsession does occur.
Yeah.
I can't say that I understand it or have ever felt it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very well, and it's very addictive. Like, I mean, it's just like I've got to have sugar, that kind of. Yeah, gotta have it, that kind of thing. Well, it's fascinating. The only other question I would ask you, and then we're going to go into our wrap up, would be, so you go visit Charlie, okay? Charlie doesn't want to go into the light. Charlie likes staying here too much. Charlie would miss being here. What are your thoughts about apparitions that certainly just don't want to go anywhere? They just want to hang around and, I don't know, hang at the place that they like the most. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can tell you Charlie's still working. Charlie was the station master during the Civil War at the B&O. He played a huge role in the Civil War, which, he's one of those probably forgotten parts of history. But the fact that the B&O connected Washington, D.C. to points west is a kind of big deal. And Charlie and the Patapsco Guard kept that spot safe and kept it in the side of the Union. So that is incredibly relevant. And he just has this strong sense of duty and responsibility, and he stays on. He still actually helps out with chores sometimes, like, occasionally like the trash is already cleaned up or the doors are already locked, when the museum staff goes to close up. So Charlie's definitely a benevolent spirit. And I find that there are a lot of those in some of the old buildings that I know, that they had some sense of pride or connection to that place, and they've stayed on knowingly to maintain it. Yeah. And it's an amazing sense of honor, really.
Yeah, well said, and very interesting too, to try to explain that not all apparitions are bad, mean apparitions. There are some that just feel it's their duty to remain for some reason.
Yes.
Very, very cool and fascinating information tonight. Tell everybody a little bit about, if they want to reach out to you for a reading or whatnot, how would they go about doing that, and any information you would like to share?
Well, the easiest way to find me is on my website, teandsmoke.com. And there's email there. You can connect to me there on my Instagram. I have a Facebook account. All of those are ways to reach me. And my whole schedule's on there. So if you're in the Mid-Atlantic region, you can see when I'll be giving tours or talks or public readings where, I fit in 20 people in a day. And all of those things are on that website, and I update it all the time.
Rissa, we'll have to have you back. Wonderful, wonderful time today, and I will be in touch with you myself. And on behalf of the show, thank you so very much